Hi everyone, so today we're looking at how a player could apply more force into the handle down the plane that the club is traveling on. Something that I've seen a lot of good ball strikers do using the 3D motion capture. For today we're going to focus specifically on the movement around the trail shoulder and how that's really influential on helping a player apply that force for more club head speed and a better delivery. Before we get into the main content of the video here, I just want to thank you for watching. Hopefully you'll find something here to help you with your game. If you do, please remember to hit subscribe if you've not already. Okay, so today we're looking at applying force into the handle down the plane. So as far as the plane, I want to keep it really simple today. If you can just imagine a lot of the top players in the world, you don't see too much movement of the shaft one way or the other. Once they get to about here in downswing, through the hit, it stays pretty much similar for each player. There's not too much of the club head moving this way or out in front. The way the club is releasing is actually quite similar as well. So as far as moving down the plane and the force the player puts into the club, it really connects back to that movement. We see a lot of good players moving into impact and through the shot. So really some good stuff here that might help a lot of other players. And today we're just going to focus purely on the trail shoulder movement and then feed back into how a player moves around their trail arm in backswing and how that then connects to how they'll move in transition and help them to apply that force into the handle. So in mind today, I've just got a player that worked with me recently. And before we get into it actually, there's obviously more than just the movement around the trail arm that goes into a player to be able to achieve that force, which relates to the better impact. But today we're just going to focus on the trail shoulder movement. And as we go through it, you'll see why I've chosen this particular segment. Okay, so the player that I had in mind, the movement that he had that was really challenging him to get a good transition and apply that force was the movement around the trail shoulder and how, as he moved to the top of backswing, the trail shoulder would elevate or move upwards. And really, but easiest way I could describe it, I like to keep simple visuals for players, is if you can imagine the seam on the shirt, if you can see the seam on my shirt there, the seam on the shirt was really shortening there. So the end of his shoulder, the shoulder joint, was moving closer to the base of his neck or closer to his ear. So that would be the visual. So as he moves to the top of backswing, he gets about here and then the shoulder would start to move up and he'd really lose a lot of space there between the shoulder joint and his ear or the base of his neck. Okay, so why does that feed back to making it harder for him to apply force? Simply because what we're looking for in backswing is to set ourselves into a position where we can actually apply force well, and the way to do that is to have good connection with the trail scap on the back of the rib cage. And when that shoulder moves upwards like this, the scap elevates as well and we lose that connection. So the analogy I like to use with players is that if you can imagine you're in the gym and you're on a cable machine and you wanted to really pull down, imagine that pull down the plane visual that we're also connecting to here in the video and you really want to pull down, it would be a lot more challenging to pull down with force if the shoulder was in this position. It would be quite hard to do that. So we really want to make sure the trail scap there sits down nicely and stays connected nicely to the back of the rib cage. So that's the first thing we're looking to do. We're looking at, the objective is to reduce this and essentially keep the length in the seam then on the shirt. So we want to create a lot more space there to the top. I'll show you that down the line. And I guess you can probably picture the player, on the leading tours in the world, and how at the top there they have quite a nice bit of room there, a nice bit of length between the shoulder joint and the base of the neck there. Okay, so that's the visual we're looking to achieve. Now let's look back at what earlier in the backswing really influences and helps a player to achieve that position at the top. So we're going to go back to that next level, and essentially with the player that I have in mind as well, through backswing, his trail elbow would start to move behind the shoulder, and then as he got to the top, you would see the response at the shoulder that would put him in that compromising position. Okay, so whenever looking at elbow movement, I then typically go down to the wrist. So the movement of the wrist will very much control and have a big influence on the way the elbow moves. But also with this player, we've got to look at the segment on the other side of the shoulder. We've looked at the elbow, we're going to look at the wrist, we're going to look at the rib cage. So this player's pattern matched up with the elbow moving behind was the rib cage wouldn't rotate very well. So we connected this back to, through his trail wrist, if we allowed the trail thumb to work upwards early in his swing, that would help the elbow to sit down. At the same time, we want the rib cage to rotate better in the start of the swing. So for that, I had the player set up and just reference the bottom of his trail rib with his trail elbow. And as the thumb points up in the start, I wanted him to keep the relationship between the bottom rib and his trail elbow the same. So we'd actually have to rotate his rib cage to match the movement of the trail arm. And you can see that when he does that, the elbow sits down nicely. And if you were to go through that motion yourself, you'll notice how you maintain the length at the top of the shoulder there, the objective that we're working towards. Okay, so that helps us maintain the length early in the swing, making sure the rib cage is rotating and allowing the trail thumb to sit up. Okay, so moving now to the top of backswing, how do we move from around here, which is the thumb up, the rib cage rotated, how do we move to there, to the top, without losing the space that we've created in the start? So the next component of this would be thumb up, rib cage rotates at the start, then thumb, we're going to allow it to point out to say 11 o'clock. So if the target in front of me was 12 o'clock, as we continue to rotate to the top, we're going to point our trail thumb out to what feels like 11 o'clock. Okay, so thumb up, out to 11 o'clock. That's the feel that we worked, that's the way we work towards. And when working through that, you should feel like you're maintaining that space, because that's the whole reason, that's the main objective we're working towards. And you should feel like we've got a nice connection with the scap on the back of the rib cage there. So that's what we're looking at. So rib cage rotates, trail elbow and trail bottom rib work together, thumb works up, and then thumb out to 11 o'clock, maintaining the space here at the trail shoulder. Okay, so that's the feel there. That's what we worked on with the player. Worked out extremely well. Let's see how I can work through this here now. So moving into the ball, making sure I'm just lined up with the camera there for you all. Thumb up, work through it nice and slowly, out to 11 o'clock, and working into it. Let's see if I can hit one here now and maintain that space nicely. That one felt pretty nice there. So I feel like this is a good one for a lot of golf, because I find that around that trail shoulder, when they come to see me, often not in the best position, and it often goes back to set up, how they move through the start of the swing, maybe some perceptions and thoughts they may have about how to transition. But essentially I find that reference there of maintaining the space between the base of the neck and the shoulder is a good one for players to go off.